And we're back. Hello, everyone, to another episode of the Bardcast. This is, episode 7 now?
It is, yes.
We've been at it for a while. Good for us. We haven't stopped yet. So I am Chris. I play Cori in Clanlord, or Coriakin, I should say. And together with me is...
Sammy, and I play as Bingro.
Awesome. And today we're going to talk to you about a bit more of a technical topic, but one that I think will be approachable even to non-composers. So we're going to talk about contrast in music, and specifically the idea of contrasting sections. Now, going all the way back to episode 2, I talked about how I think of music and making art in general as designing an experience. If you want more information on that, definitely go back and check out the intro to episode 2. But you might remember how I stole from the lead designer of the Magic the Gathering card game the idea of thinking about comfort versus surprise, as in people hearing stuff they expect and then people hearing stuff they don't expect. Or I think about it even as people having expectations that you either fulfill or thwart. But to be honest, of course, you need to do both to keep your audiences engaged, and using contrast between sections is one way that really, really helps with that. So if you think about it, if a piece stays the same the whole way through, it is possible to keep it interesting, especially if it's relatively short. But once you get to longer pieces, it's very, very tough. The only example I can think of a piece that does that over a really, really long time is Ravel's Bolero, which uses one theme for about, 10 minutes or something like that, until it finally switches to something else just before the end. And that's really interesting, but not every piece can be like that. So really what you want to do to make a piece stay interesting to your listeners is to have pieces in it that have some contrast. And when people talk about the idea of form in music, that's what they're referring to. How to combine contrasting and similar sections. How to combine them together to make an overall experience that is interesting and engaging. In many cases, that experience I'm talking about is really an emotional journey, moving from one key to another and then finally back, moving from dissonance to consonance, like I do in We'll Find a Way Back Home. But really, it's really about moving from tension to resolution, starting out somewhere stable, or maybe not even starting somewhere stable, but moving somewhere that feels unstable, and then finally getting back to a place that does feel more relaxed. I guess in general, the whole idea behind a contrasting section is you really want to make the listener think, oh, this is new, or maybe something unexpected. But again, it's not so different that it doesn't feel like part of the same piece.
Yeah, I wanted to add something, because when I started my journey as a composer for Clanlord, my music wasn't very diverse in a way. And I didn't think about contrasting sections that much, but it became increasingly important to me throughout my journey, because in the beginning my music was short. If you remember, maybe Always or Experiments. Those are short, simple songs that don't need very diverse themes or different sections. The longer the piece goes, as you just said, the more contrast is needed to keep the audience interested. Mm-hmm. So I did experience that firsthand.
Mm-hmm. And to be honest, I did as well. That makes perfect sense. The more I think about it, especially when you're starting out, like at this point, I'm all about how do we develop ideas? How do you take a musical idea and really, really polish it? But when you're first starting out, it's really just all about having an idea. What is this idea? Can I just get it down on paper? Can I let someone else hear it? And then one idea is really all you need for a piece. But again, that works best for about, even up to a minute long is probably fine. Longer than that, you really need to be doing something special with your single idea.
Yeah, I agree. But at first, it's not that important. I think in the way barding works for Clanlord, it's not that important. At first, you have your Questa auditions, and I think we're getting to listen to one or two Questa pieces today. For me, I feel like it was more like the contrast is an accident. It's not always intentional when you start. Today, it is more or less intentional, but back then it was, I came up with another idea, and I was able to put those pieces of the puzzle together, and it worked all right.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And again, I'm going to reiterate another point that I say all the time, which is that music theory follows music practice. Like all the rules, quote unquote, that we're talking about are really just looking at things that have worked well in the past and trying to explain why they worked well. My pieces had some degree of complexity at the beginning, I mean, a little bit even, but a lot of that is just me being like, oh, It would sound cool if it did this. And really, that's where everybody starts. Everyone just starts with, let's make something that sounds good. And that's honestly where people should start. And hopefully they stick with it. They don't get too fancy as time goes on. I'm saying that to myself mostly.
No, but you're totally right. When I started doing things, mostly things were happening by accident. That sounded nice by accident, and so I kept it. But I couldn't explain how I did this afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly, I tried to do some Always 2.0, but I wasn't able to because I don't know what I was thinking when I really wrote that.
Oh, interesting. I think I'm pretty good at figuring out what past Coriakin used to be wanting to do. Maybe because my pieces are so straightforward, but it's fine. Oh, just one point I wanted to bring up, though, which is, like, contrast is good, but you don't want too much of it. Looking in the real world, a piece that uses just, like, almost too much contrast, but just barely, like, squeaks through is George Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue. If you think about it, it's really just like a collection of different scenes sort of juxtaposed together that some of them fit, some of them don't, and they're all connected by a sort of feel, but a lot of the sections don't have that much connecting them. No, I'm actually, hang on just a second, let me think about this. No, I think that I'm overdoing it. I don't think that's necessarily true.
I had that feeling with Convincing Myself, where my impression was that the sections I wrote do not connect properly. They're too different, and I ended up keeping it because in the end the audience that I played it for said it's all right, and that is, I think that's also important. It's not always that you have the universal understanding of how people will perceive your music. Sometimes you're wrong, and sometimes people feel completely different about music you wrote than you do yourself.
That's very, very true. Oh, I'm remembering now. Again, I'm still out of Clanlord music, but In the Hall of the Mountain King by Grieg.
I think it's Grieg, yeah.
He wrote this piece to be this sort of like over-the-top, bombastic, really like a parody of a piece, and everyone really, really loved it. It became his most well-known thing. You know, audiences are going to hear what they want to hear, so what can you do? Yeah. Anyway, what I meant to say about Rhapsody in Blue is that it has so many sections that are very, very contrasting, but it does almost feel like they don't fit together, but Gershwin does manage to keep them really connected. Comparing that to, what am I thinking of? An American in Paris, which is a bit more what you might call mature, where he's taking the same sort of idea, but has more tools in his toolbox, so to speak. All right, then, well, why don't we talk about some music from Clanlord? Since you mentioned it, would you like to talk about Convincing Myself first?
I'd love to, yes.
All right, let's go for it. What would you like to say about it?
Yeah. Actually, the working title was Missing You. That was the first thing that came to mind when I wrote the A section. The form is very simple. It's intro A, B, C, B. So B is already the recurring theme.
Hold on a second. Hang on just a second. Let's slow down a little bit for people who don't know. So when we talk about those letters, we're specifically referring to a section. Like if it's an A section, that's one contained musical idea. So when he's talking about A, B, he's talking about there's one musical idea, and then a second different musical idea follows it. Then we get into another A, B. So basically what happens is we have the first idea, we have the second idea, we have the first idea again, then we have the second idea, and then that C is a third section that's entirely different. So something new comes up right at the end, just before that final B section. If you're really still confused by this, think of A almost like a verse, and B like a chorus maybe. And then C could be a bridge. But again, that only works if you understand chorus, verse, and bridge, but we do the best we can. Anyway, sorry about that. Carry on.
No worries. I was too fast. You're totally right. Yeah, exactly. The working title was Missing You. And while writing, I felt like I'm not happy with where the music is leading me. And it just doesn't fit the original title anymore. So I threw that overboard. And as I already told you, I struggled with how the music felt when I presented for the first time. And the audience convinced me that it's not that bad. Mm-hmm. And so I had to convince myself, hence the title.
Interesting.
So that is how the title actually came to life.
Oh, interesting. Shall we hear it before we say more about it? Or do you want to say anything else?
Yes.
All right.
No, that's fine.
Sorry, just as a quick aside, this idea of hearing something and not really liking it is actually, I've realized, has just become part of my process. Like, I will start with an
Yeah.
idea I love, and then I spend like hours working on it, and by the end, I don't really like it anymore because I've heard it too much, and I've heard all the things that are wrong about it. And at this point, I've learned to trust myself and trust the process, that if I keep working on it, I will get it to a point where I do like it. But what you're talking about, where you have a mostly finished piece and still don't like it, man, that's rough.
Yeah, but in the end, I'm happy, and I still play it from time to time today, so
Well,
it's fine. Maybe one more thought. It's in the end, it's like drinking coffee or beer. You don't like those drinks at first, but after some time, you end up with the musical equivalent of the Stockholm Syndrome. So I do like some things about this piece. I do like the separate parts standing on their own, and I did like them back then as well. So it's more like I didn't like how they are connected, and now I'm used to it, and I can totally accept it as a piece.
that's interesting. The idea of immediate appeal versus lasting appeal is something that I also think about. So this had something that once you had enough time to get over the initial shock, you did like, Well, let's take a listen to it and then see how you feel about it now.
Yes.
If there's any specific moments you still don't like, we can talk about them. But as a piece, I
Sure.
like it. So here we go. All right, so this is the intro. And here's the A section. This is your B section. A comes back here. And here's the return of the B section. And then C section. And then the end is the B section again. Yeah, I don't know. I really like that piece. I'm not sure. You'll have to explain to me why you were so down on it at first.
Oh, I don't know. I can't tell you today. I like it today, and maybe it was. I remember me feeling indifferent about the connection of A and B. I like the B to A, but I didn't like the A to B. I felt like that connection is very, very bumpy. And I couldn't figure out where the problem was. And then having that C section, that C part,
I know.
where we have that 5/4 plus 4 for rhythm, which is a huge contrast as well. I think that didn't make it easier for me to accept this as a piece that's currently working.
Oh man. So can I say a few things about it then?
Yeah, sure.
So that C section is actually my favorite part.
Mine as well. But it was more the overall picture of the piece.
Well,
not the single part. I did like the single part, and I especially did like that C part.
Yeah.
Because I'm a huge fan of odd time signatures, and that felt great. And I tried to transport it to 4/4, but that killed the whole vibe. So I kept the 5/4/4/4.
Well,
or 9/8, or whatever you feel like fits better.
Talking about contrast, one of the things that works really well is, again, I think about everything in terms of setting up expectations for the audience and then messing around with them. So the fact that your A section and B section are fairly similar, like the accompaniment keeps that bum, 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 bum rhythm going, which is really funky, especially with your low, like your bass note is offset by one beat, which is really cool. Anyway, it makes sense if you're looking at the music. If you're listening and you're like, what's Chris talking about? Don't worry about it. But anyway, the point is that never changes, even though your A section and B section have different melodies. So when you finally switch to this entirely different feel with this odd time signature, with this odd beat, it's so effective because the brain just wants to keep that steady rhythm going. And it's sort of like I keep bumping over speed bumps or something like that. Or it's like when you're walking up the stairs and you miss a stair or something like that. It just keeps happening. But my brain doesn't get used to it because you already trained me to think in 4. So it's that like sense of being off lasts the whole time. And I love that.
Yeah, I do like that part as well. Maybe for some audience members, it could help if you would play the C part as a standalone.
Sure.
And count the beats. I felt like it's easiest to count 5 and 4.
Sure.
Just so people can hear where the difference is. Because I would count, but I think I'm offset when we record.
All right. Let me just check something really quickly before we go.
Yeah.
So I would probably do 4 first and then 5 second, if you're okay with that.
Okay, I felt like 5/4 is easier, but however you feel like it.
Sure, well, let's try it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I really think it's 4, 5 in my brain at least.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. It's interesting though.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, that was so cool. Maybe we should leave that in.
Yeah, true. Leave it in.
Either that or like stick it at the end. Anyway,
Totally.
Yep. So, all right, I'll give it a shot. Here we go. Here's the end of the previous section. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1. And then we get back.
Yeah, and that was the easy way out.
Mm-hmm. It just, if you're ever not sure how to get out of an odd time signature, just repeat a note and then go back to it. The original one. I've used that many times. But yeah, I
yeah, maybe that helps understanding what's going on there.
Yeah.
With counting.
Mm-hmm. If you'd gone back to listen to that episode 2 and we talked about all the different aspects of music, like rhythm, melody, harmony, tone color, texture, structure, stuff like this, this works out really well as a contrasting section because, I mean, obviously same instrument, tone color is the same. The melody is somewhat similar, but your rhythm is just so different. It really provides a great contrast to what you set up before. I want to contrast that, if you don't mind us moving on, to one of my very first pieces, and it is a Quester piece, Tranquil Seas.
Great.
All right, so this is...
I love those. Yeah, that's the root of your being as a bard.
It really is. Just block chords. Again, I started out as a piano player, so in my brain, I would start out with chord in the left hand, play melody in the right hand, and you'll be able to hear that here. But again, it's not so bad. I've learned to have a lot of charity for early Coriakin, or early Chris. He had some good musical ideas. He just didn't know how to develop them. All right, so before we listen to it, let's actually just go through the structure. It's very, very simple. There's an A section, and there's a B section. So something happens, I think I repeat it, and then something else happens, and I think I repeat that. So I think there might be an intro beforehand. But again, for this one, because it's so short, the contrast needed is less, and in fact, if there was more contrast, it probably wouldn't even feel like the same piece. But at the same time, like, you can still tell where it feels like, oh, something's different here. So let's take a listen. Here we go. Here's our intro. There's our chord. Here's the A section. A section. Ooh, with some variation. And here's the B section. Oh, it's cute.
Yeah, you've come a long way.
Yeah.
I think you can hear that it's one of the first songs one would write for Clanlord.
But what's fascinating is that I'm starting to see little tiny hints of where I would get to eventually. I love that you noticed that what turned out to be a typo.
Yeah.
My final 5-chord, my E, instead of being EGB, ended up being EGA.
E G sharp
Or,
A, yeah.
E G sharp A instead of. That's what it should have been, but instead it was this. But that became my favorite part, also because I shuffled that up a little bit. So there's just this little tiny bit of rhythmic interest to get away from the steady chonk, chonk, chonk on downbeats. That's my favorite part now because I can just see a little bit of where I came. Sorry, can I just play it one more time just because I love it?
Yeah, sure.
Here we go. There's a little tiny push, and then the push again, and then we're back to the square thing. But yeah, that's sort of what makes the contrast work. Like the first part. Oh, sorry, hang on. It's this super, super simple melody. It's just stepwise motion. Not particularly interesting or exciting, but again, for someone who's just starting out, it's absolutely fine. But then we get to this second section where I get into stuff that's a little bit more interesting in terms of adding more leaps in the melody. And also, the key changes actually too, doesn't it?
Yeah, I felt that's the real contrast in this piece.
Mm-hmm.
Because going from a minor to a major, yeah, they share the same root note, and yeah, they share the same dominant. So you can use the same chord to move from one key to the other. But I feel like that's it. There's no more connection than that. And the one is in major, the other one is in minor. The notes, the stuff you're working with are very different because a major has, I think, 3 sharps.
Yeah.
While a minor has none and no flats.
Well, you can
put
in the G sharp there, but I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
For the dominant, yes, sure. But I think that's it, and that felt like the huge contrast to me. I think I did that move once, going from A minor to a major, or whatever it was, C minor to C major. But usually that's a huge leap. It's not that easy to do. So great stuff. Trying that as a quester or hopeful.
Again, I'd played piano for about 8 years at that point, probably 10. So that sort of playing around with chord stuff was something I did. Again, I was a really bad piano student, not because I was a bad pianist, but because I was hyperactive. So I'd find ways to I'd start playing one of my pieces and I'd turn it into Star Wars or something like that. I'd do a mashup, or I'd just start, and that's what really led me to composing, just playing around, having fun with stuff, quote unquote, breaking the rules of what I was supposed to do at the piano. And again, that led to me being the creative person I am. So I don't know. That's pretty cool. I don't know if there's much else we can say about this piece because it's so simple, but I do think it's a good example of using a small amount of contrast in a shorter piece.
Yeah, and for anyone listening who might want to take a look into composing for Clanlord and might want to become a quester, it can be this simple. There's no problem at all writing a song this simple. It doesn't have to be as complex as a Rakshasa song or Seppel doing Seppel things. It's about showing that you understood how music works in the basic stuff.
Exactly.
Nothing else.
Cool.
So maybe that one is a small motivation for one or two.
Man, I hope so. I'm really glad we got a brand new quester just this weekend. I'm really pumped.
Yeah, that was great.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Anyway, I think that's all I want to say about this, but why don't we talk about one of your other pieces? What would you like to talk about?
Let's talk about A Friend's Goodbye. Usually I feel like I don't get to play that very often because it makes most sense at the end of a concert, and sometimes I just forget about it. But I like it. It's a cool little piece, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, since you don't play it often, let's take a listen to it first before we dive into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Here we go.
And the show would fly away ending.
It's a very effective ending.
And I think it fits the theme of saying goodbye. So I pictured someone waving a hand.
I could see that. I could definitely see that. You're right. I think you're right. You don't play this piece often enough. I really do enjoy it. I'd like to say a couple of things about it then. So there's several different kinds of contrast here that I really enjoy. Let's go to the thing that jumped out at me first, which is that you set up this lovely ostinato, this repeated pattern at the beginning, starting right around here. And that continues the whole way through underneath your A section.
Yeah.
Which I believe starts here. So I like that you keep that going. And then when you get to the B section, I love thinking about the idea of dichotomies, of opposites. And in this case, the opposite is between movement and stillness, or being stationary. So what's the opposite of having this like constantly flowing pattern? Answer, big block chords. And that's what you do when you get down to, oh, hang on, let's go to right here. Maybe I can actually get rid of the melody just for a second to make it more obvious for our listeners. Sorry, that's the sound of me messing around in Logic. Here's the just the accompaniment. Oh, actually, that was hidden. I didn't even notice that. You got this lovely little tiny melody in your accompaniment.
Mm-hmm. You mean the bass?
Da, 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 da. That you don't just repeat the same chord 3 times in a row. You do change it up. But again, the difference between that those block chords, bum, 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 versus the constantly flowing pattern really does give it some nice rhythmic emphasis. That said, now let's look at the other thing, which is let's look at the melodies, because that was another lovely contrast. Can I isolate just the melody? Let's find out. Oh, not what I wanted at all. I wanted to get rid of this. Again, that's the sound of a lot of notes going away. So that's your B section melody. let's contrast that with. So it's got this lovely flowing quality, and looking at it, oh, sorry, I'm copying it again. But it looks like basically rolling waves almost in terms of what notes would look like on a page. Whereas for this one,
and
okay, good. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you feel the same, but it also feels a bit. We already used that word, wonky. It's a bit offset. It's not perfect on time at some point in the A section. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Well, I feel that it is perfectly where it's supposed to be, but you're right that the melodies don't start right on beat 1, so there's this feeling of being just a little bit off balance. Nothing quite starts squarely. I was talking to another bard recently about trying to make things square in terms of having steady rhythms, but once it's too square, you end up with something like Tranquil Seas, where it gets a little bit boring. So putting things just a little bit off, but as long as the steady beat's still there, is the way to do it. Whereas with the B section, if I can anticipate what you're about to say next, it's much more of that sort of square, except for here. Yeah. So you're contrasting the rhythm, you're contrasting the accompaniment, and you're contrasting the feel as well. Like it just gets, I think it actually doesn't really get that much higher in the range, but it sort of feels that way. Interesting. Cool. In general, I really like it. I think the contrast works out super well.
Thanks. One funny thing, that wonkiness in the melody was an accident that I happened to like, so I kept it.
The English word for that is serendipity. When something unexpected happens, it's just lovely.
Yeah, true. Yeah, but other than that, you're totally right. When I wrote this, I had a word in mind that translates perfectly from German to English. There's the same word. It's bittersweet, and that is a contrast in itself.
Oh, that's my favorite sound.
It's a goodbye, but in the end, you're saying goodbye to a friend. So most likely there's a reunion, and you like that person, and you have mixed feelings. And I wanted to portray those mixed feelings in the music.
Yeah, that you do a really good job of that. But yeah, oh my gosh, that bittersweet quality it's something I really, really, really love. So can I say something funny as a closer here?
Yeah, sure.
Look, this is the first time I've actually looked at the notes. I really enjoy this piece. I did not realize up until now that you basically just put a big old repeat mark around the entire thing. It's just like the way you flow from the end of the B section into the start of what is actually the intro repeated exactly is entirely effortless, and it doesn't make it sound like it's just like the same thing repeated. I don't know. You use contrast in a way that makes things coming back unchanged feel perfectly fine. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I think in that moment I felt lazy, but it's all right in hindsight.
Laziness is the source of all efficiency, so I love it.
True.
All right. Well, why don't we finish by talking about one of my pieces? And we talked a little bit about the idea of serendipity, things happening almost by accident. And this is kind of a fun little piece because there were two separate things going on at once that came together to make this piece happen. You may not remember this, or definitely the audience probably doesn't, but back about 2 or 3 years ago, we were doing these monthly Bard composing challenges, and Rakshasa set us up a challenge to take a piece, reimagine it as something else, like do an arrangement of a piece.
Oh, I do remember that. That's where my in memoriam, the concerto thing.
Oh, I think you called it concerto.
I think that's what I wrote for that.
I think you called it concerto. Another great title pun that I appreciated. And Zeppel did Morning's Beginning, and I wanted to do a Rakshasa piece, and I was looking through all sorts of fun ones. Like my favorite piece by him is probably Harvest Moon, but just a few weeks or a month before, I was looking through his back catalog and found this blues-inspired piece called Clawmates that I think must have been one of his very early pieces, because the rhythm was just a little bit off in a way that made it not flow the way like a usual swing is done in 3. But but it still was a good piece. So I'm like, maybe I'll just redo this sometime. And then this contest came around, so I'm like, I'll do it. And then I was trying to mess around with it, and I didn't like anything. But then I remembered that I had this tiny little fragment of like a Latin piece. So I'm like, what if I just arrange this as a Latin piece? So by jamming two entirely separate pieces together, I formed this.
Oh, great.
That's kind of fun.
That's cool.
Which is ironic because that's actually what happened for my contest piece just recently. I took a really, really old idea and a new thing, just jammed them together and tried to make them work in terms of contrasting sections. I'll talk about that later.
It's completely planned from beginning to the end.
Naturally. What am I talking about?
It was originally written for the contest.
Right. It definitely was an idea I've been sitting on for 2 years. Jeez. Okay.
No, can't be.
Yeah, no. But for Rakshasa's piece, obviously there was some translating the melody to this new Latin rhythm and stuff. But the biggest thing was his original was an ABA, what they would call a ternary form, as opposed to binary. There's a section, a contrasting section, and then the first thing comes back. And in the original, the first part is in major key, the middle part is minor, and then the last part is major. So I thought, what if I change that around? Because my Latin idea is in a minor key. What if I make the middle part major? So let's take a listen. So again, this is all just intros, setting up the intro of the first idea for the A section, which is here. And then repeat. Now this next part was part of his A section originally. I changed it to a sort of a contrasting idea. Still similar. This is just a long transition. This isn't really a section of its own.
But I love that transition.
Now here's the contrasting section. Speaking of being lazy, why not reuse the same transition twice? And then back to the A section.
Actually, that's smart. I didn't recognize that when listening to it, but makes total sense.
Again, efficiency and laziness.
Let's call it efficiency.
Sounds good. It was really fun to put together, yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Just one little tiny thing, if I can point out before we go. It was the main melody of the B section originally. So I used that in the transition. I used that in that sort of like big party contrasting section. Yeah, I just took his themes and jammed them in a lot of different places to make them work. But yeah, do you have any thoughts you'd like to say before I get into this?
Other than it's a great piece, and I'm glad to have the chance to talk about it today. I feel like the contrast sticks out so obviously because you have this hard rhythm in the A section and then the more flowing theme type in the B section. So I really felt like, yeah, that makes total sense. But using the same transition from A to B and from B to A, that was just killing me. So I did never recognize that.
Well, I mean, I changed it a little bit. I did add in some other little melody things on top of it, but the main core component is mostly the same.
Yeah, and knowing it, I do hear the similarities, but I should have listened to it more closely.
Well,
shame on me.
Not necessarily. I hide stuff all over the place, but now that you know, you can take it, steal it, and use it yourself.
Yeah, I probably will.
As you
because
should.
I'm efficient.
Exactly. I heard a great joke which I always reuse, which is that what was the phrasing? Composers listen to music with the ears of a kleptomaniac.
Yeah, just like I did with the theme for the contest.
Exactly.
That is originally yours. But nobody has to know because we're just two people knowing that, and nobody else will know.
Don't tell anyone. All right. Okay, come on. Back on track. Let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, in terms of how to combine different things to make it fit together, I knew that this first part was very sparse. There wasn't much going on. There's lots of space between the notes, especially in the vibrate part right over here. Using lots and lots of space, lots of not silence because the notes are sustained, but that really, really hopefully contrasts to just how much is going on at the last part. But or the contrasting part. But there's something else that really matters to me, which I think is cool about this piece, which is the idea of that first part really brings out that low quality of the vibra. It's like full sound, very, very, I don't even know what to describe it like. But comparing that to like the sparkling, shiny sound it has in the top register, that was another contrast. So, because when in the B section, we really use that high section. And we get a little bit of the melody there. But it's doubled at the octave, so it's even though it's got that low sound in there, it's still trying to keep that little sparkly high tone color, I believe is the term I'd use for that. Yeah. Whereas with the guitar, it's pretty much the same the whole way through. The first part, very, very almost, I guess the art term would be pointillistic, using little points of light on darkness. Yeah, the idea of like if you have artwork that's mostly black with little points of light, that's the sort of general idea I was going for with that melody. And again, contrasting that to in the B section, there's no silence ever. It's always sustained notes. Anyway, but lots and lots of fun stuff going on here, I think. And
true.
The question, of course, is how to prevent that huge change, that difference from sounding like it doesn't belong together. Obviously, the first part is it's a same melody that is, it's originally from the original piece, so obviously it fits together if it's taken from the same place. But it's actually not obvious that it does fit together. So I had to make sure, like, the tempo is the same, the key is the same, all of the stuff is similar. We're just in the relative major, I believe. I didn't check that beforehand, but I'm going to assume that's correct. And the drum underneath is keeping the rhythm going, which obviously will help sort of glue it together.
Yeah, and it's not that easy to write contrasting sections and not lose yourself doing that and start a whole new piece by accident.
Jeez, you're not wrong about that.
I don't know how many musical ideas I scrapped because it didn't fit the A section I wrote, and I didn't get anywhere. So I had to go that step back and start new.
Yeah.
And yeah, a lot is lost during those paths I did not plan to walk on.
Yeah, well, that's really just part of writing music, because everyone assumes, like, when the audience listens to music, it sounds, and I guess this is a great point to close on, when the audience hears a piece of music, it sounds like a cohesive whole. It sounds, especially if it's well written, like it couldn't have gone any other way. It just sounds perfect. But, I mean, when you're in the trenches, when you're writing stuff, you know that things could go any different way. Even one of my pieces, what is it? One of the newer ones, the one that's not ruminating or validorable, Sunlight Through the Shadows, I think is what I decided to call it. Originally, there's like a contrasting section that was entirely different, but I was giving up on the piece because it didn't feel like it belonged. It was only after I just removed that B section and stuck something else there that I eventually was able to keep going with what I thought was a promising A section. And of course, the problem is it was a promising B section too. It's a promising B section for a different piece.
I hope you didn't delete it, but just put it aside.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And again, that's a great piece of advice for everyone is don't be afraid to take things apart, especially if you love it, but it's not working. It still needs to go. I believe in the writing world that call that not being afraid to kill your babies. You may love it, but if it doesn't belong there, it needs to go.
It's good we're not doing this for money, because that would be the point when we would have been demonetized.
But the thing is, it's kind of shocking, but it's really true, because a lot of people feel, and I have felt this many times, like, no, I love this. I care so much about this. It has to stay. But no, a piece isn't done when there's nothing left to add. A piece is done when there's nothing left to take away too. And again, it's one of those things where you really, really love something, but a little part of you is telling you it doesn't fit, that you have to take it out and set it aside and find a new home for it. So, I guess.
But sometimes it might also be enough, and if you play it, people like it anyway.
Good point.
Just like I experienced it.
Absolutely. Again, you have to come up with stuff that you like, but at the same time, we're all human beings. We all make mistakes, and we all hear things differently, and maybe the audience will hear something differently. So, yeah, don't be afraid. Give it a try. I've found that the best advice I've had for myself for that is I just find a bunch of friends that I trust to bounce ideas off, and, sometimes they give me lots of like, oh, yeah, that's great, but sometimes they're like, is that really the best you can do? Or I kind of like this, but there's this one little thing that isn't working, and that's useful advice too.
But I think we were just rumbling on right now, so I'll try to keep it short.
Good.
That's something I do like about the Clanlord Bard community. I do know every single song I'm uncertain about. I can play to anyone, and everybody would say, that's a cool one, but maybe you might want to consider this or that. Mm-hmm. So there's always this appreciation, but also, don't you want to learn about this or that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I really like that. It's a form of respect in both ways, by saying something nice and also offering advice to help out and to give me the opportunity to write a better piece of music that I like and everybody else hopefully likes as well.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. Yeah, I heard a great analogy for that, which is like critical feedback is like medicine that tastes bad. It's good for you, but it's not necessarily fun getting it. Although, if you find the right person, maybe they'll give it to you with some sugar to make it a bit easier.
No, I'd even go a step further. Professionally, I do like to get critical feedback. I ask for it, because if you get it more often, you learn how to work with it, and if it is given in a respectful manner, who cares? I do know that the people who give their feedback to me usually do like me, but they also like me so much that they want me to improve, and especially when I ask for feedback.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. All right, then, you heard it here first. If you're interested in becoming a bard and you want to ask one of us for feedback, you can let us know if you want feedback with sugar or without.
Only salt, please.
Oh, fantastic! All right, well, it's been really, really fun talking about this, and I can't wait to talk about. Again, contrast is something that comes up in every piece, so we're definitely going to revisit this, but probably not as a specific episode in the future. But if you got any questions, definitely let us know.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, once again, I've been Chris and Coriakin, and of course with me is...
Semi, and I play as Bingro.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for listening to us. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye. Yeah, and actually, on a side note, I was struggling with C-section as a term earlier because that reminded me of some other meaning that it has, or I thought it has, and I was right.
Oh, yes, indeed.
So I struggled with that.
Oh, music is full of very, very strange terms that can be misheard a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But we have fun. We have fun.